We wanted to get you on, Raisa, this week to get a sense of what's happening in Sri Lanka, where elections for president just took place. For listeners who are unfamiliar, Sri Lanka was hit quite hard during the pandemic. And in March 2022, it announced its first ever default on all foreign debt. This was followed by a huge protest movement that saw the presidential palace stormed and the president replaced. Over the past weekend, we've had the first elections since those momentous events of 2022, and Sri Lankans seem to have voted for a change from the mainstream parties that had been in power before. But I'd like to get a sense from you, Raisa. What are you making? What happened in these elections, and what are you making of the outcome?
Thanks, Rohan, for having me and Emily as well. Yes, so this election for Sri Lanka was quite unusual in a number of ways. One of the kind of things that made it unusual is that this was the first election after this crippling kind of economic crisis that happened in 2022, which you referenced, and which saw really dire shortages of essentials like fuel, medicine, cooking gas, and led to a wave of protests, which led to the unseating of the then President Gotabaya Rajapaksa of the SLPP. And so this is the first election that happened after that, and the first time people were able to cast their vote for a new president. It's also unusual because usually in Sri Lanka, elections are a two-horse race, and this time, because of the public disaffection with kind of establishment politics, we saw a record number of candidates kind of put in their nominations. There were 38 different candidates who announced nominations. And of course, it came down in the end to around three top candidates. And so this election was quite hard to predict in that sense. There was no clear front runner until just before the results were announced. But having said that, it was clear that Anura Kumara Dissanayake was likely to be one of the front runners. Simply because he represented a departure from establishment politics. Now, the protesters were calling for system change, and they wanted an overhaul of the political system. They wanted a stop to corruption and nepotism. And a lot of the other parties and candidates represented the old rule. And that is why I believe they went with Anura Kumara Dissanayake, who represented a departure from that.